Hi and welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to show you how I took care of my import from Ecuagenera. I was staying at this event for a couple of days and had a long way home, so I ended up unpacking the plants and then putting them all into buckets with wet sphagnum moss in them, and then I covered them in plastic and hoped that they would survive. Thinking back, this wasn't the best idea. They would probably have been better off had I left them in the packaging, even though it would have been drier. I just think they would have had a greater chance of surviving that way. And then I'm going to continue updating you throughout the video how they fared. It's now been 4 days since I unpacked them. As you saw, I just packed them into some moss and I covered them in plastic until I was able to bring them home into this humidity tent. Already in just a few hours you could see them starting to have yellowing leaves. So this is just an update to see how they fared. The warocqueanum is doing way better than what I expected it to. It looks decent. The seedling leaves are falling off. The pallidaflorum is doing terrible. I think it has one leaf. No, none of the leaves are going to survive on this one. The luxurians is doing fine. The forgetii normal green form is doing worse than the forgetii white stripes, which is this one. This one has a very decent leaf still. This one is probably gonna go. The majesty is drooping. The serpens is dying. I think it's gonna lose all of its leaves. So I think I might just cut all of them off, just to be done with it, so that it can focus on growing roots instead of trying to save those leaves. The moronense, the oldest leaves, I could see them starting to die off within an hour of unpacking them. Like this one was already bad, that's the newest leaf, and this one is following. This one looks like it's going to survive, so like the seedling leaves look okay, but I think I'm going to cut off those. This is the pallidaflorum. This is the queremalense. The oldest leaves looks like they can stay for a bit more. I'm gonna cut off the worst ones. The gymnopus, I don't think it's any point of me turning this around and even showing you. It doesn't look good. Well, maybe it has one leaf that can survive for a few more days. Come on. The shelves are a bit too short. That one looks decent. It will probably stay for a few more days. This is the Anthurium magnificum and it's looking great. That's a jewel orchid. Moving on down. This here is the... it was a bit too big. This is the lynamii and it's looking good, honestly. This leaf was a bit yellow. It's the newest leaf. It'll probably die off, but I think I'm going to let it stay. Just because it's the newest one and I don't want to disturb this new shoot. Into this jungle that is a mess of orchids and other stuff. This is the Calathea, and I'm fairly certain it's going to die. That's the pot it's in. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. That's the one that I can't pronounce, and it's looking fine. It's looking good. In the background you have the orchid that didn't look too good, and this is the Stanhopea. It's looking fine. It looked dehydrated until I potted it up, but now it looks fine once it's got some humidity. This one looked completely dead when I repotted it, but it's also gotten better after I potted it up and gave it some humidity, so that certainly helped. Move! I'm trying to keep this at 95% humidity, but it's it's lingering on being too wet or a bit too dry. Currently, I only have one light. This stupid light, if you've ever had the lights from Nelson Garden, they will stop working after a while just because the wiring right here is going to fail at some point, so that's what happened. It worked yesterday, it's so annoying. I'm just gonna go over and trim off some of the leaves. So there's that. And I'm gonna continue to cut off the leaves that start yellowing just so that the plants can focus more on just making roots. Okay, so it's been a week in the greenhouse. I have a fan running most of the time. Let me just go down to the humidifier, which is currently it's saying that there is 95% humidity in here. I'm not entirely sure about it because my measurer decided to die. There's humidity trapped inside the screen, so it can't really tell. I just put it back in, so it says 71 for now. It's gonna continue rising. Definitely been wet enough. I found that the one disadvantage with this machine is that it has the highest possible humidity setting for it is 75, which is a bit too low for the plants I want to have in here and for it to fill the entire greenhouse. I could also just set it to constant humidity and it just creates this mist inside of the tent, and that leaves all of the plants dripping wet, so I usually alternate between the two. Now let's take a look at the plants. This is the warocqueanum, and I am surprised by still having leaves on this one. It has the 2 leaves and a new shot. I think the new shot will die. But it's still green. The pallidaflorum, which is behind this orchid, the pallidaflorum has lost most of its leaves. I decided to keep these last 2 as they are, and it looks like it's able to sustain that. It would probably be better for the plant to just cut them off though. It also has a new shoot, which I think is dying off. The roots look green and healthy. This is the forgetii white stripes. Again, I should probably take some of the leaves off. I should probably take at least this one off. We have the new growth shoot here. This one is in an aerated pot, and the roots look fine. The luxurians doesn't budge. This leaf was a bit flimsy in the beginning, but it's hardened off, and this plant also needs a lot of water. I've been watering this several times since I put it in here, which is why it's very moist at the moment. It looks to have decent root growth. I mean, this plant was perfect when I got it, so I'm just happy it doesn't hate me. The sheep is still green. There might be a short new growth inside of it, I don't know. And this is the magnificum seedling. I don't remember if I've removed any of the leaves on this one. I don't think I have. It looks very good. This is the newest leaf. It's still a bit soft, but the plant itself looks really good. There's some roots in there, looking decent. Turning it towards this one singular grow light, because I still can't get this one to work, and I haven't bothered getting a new one because there aren't that many plants in here that really needs any light. Let's move on to the serpens. It still has its newest leaf. It is still very green. It's greening up. It was completely yellow and sun deprived when I got it. It is completely flimsy, very smooth and nice. The stem of it is decent. This is the new shoot. It started molding, so I dragged off this sheet and also the tip of this, and I found a new growth inside. Who knows if this will survive it? It's very possible that it will not survive. We'll see. I'm just impressed that it's growing at all. And I don't remember exactly how big these new shoot growth points were, but they look very activated, so I think that means that the plant is somewhat happy. This one again is in a big pot just to sustain the bigness of the plant. In the background here we have the moronense. I've kept the 2 baby leaves. They look trash. I decided to keep them just for my own sake. The plants would have been better off if I'd cut them off. You can see all of the leaves I've cut off, and this is the new shoot, which is also dying. There might be something inside. Can't really see any roots either. This is the queremalense, and the leaf doesn't look very good, but I have decided to keep it. It's survived for this long, it can survive for a bit more. The new growth point, or probably just the sheath, I think it's dead. This might be a root in the process of rotting. I don't think this one had too many roots either, so it's not that easy to see, but I might need to hold back a bit on water. A whole lot of orchids back here. This is the Majesty. It was very droopy in the beginning, and it obviously needs a lot of moisture and humidity. It's also drunk a lot of water, and it looks perfect. Now this leaf is fallen off. The rest of them look really good. Even the newest one. It had these thin black spindly roots, so I'm not expecting to see... They are probably all going to die off, and then it needs to grow something new. There's some new growth even. In the background here we have the... what are you? The gymnopus. It's the gymnopus, I'm not going to double check. I also need to cut off this leaf. And that leaves us with a stump. But at least most of the plant is still somewhat green. Yeah, I can't really see anything. Let me just snip it off. I guess I just snipped it off. Yeah. There you go. The sheath is dying back. Same are all the cut shots. We'll see. Maybe you can focus on some roots now. This is the Cattleya orchid, and I've continued to cut off all of the parts that were somewhat rotting. It looks good now. This isn't really an orchid that needs this much humidity, but I thought it would like it, which is why I've kept it here. This is the lynamii, and yeah, this leaf is yellowing, but it was on import as well. This plant is getting ready for a new leaf. This plant does not give a damn about being imported. It is just happy to be alive. This is the Calathea veitchiana. It looks very sad. I haven't bothered to cut off any more of the leaves. This is the friedrichstalii one, and it doesn't bother about being imported either. It's just vibing. Is this? Oh, this is a new leaf. I hadn't seen that. It doesn't even get any light down here. Wow. Oh wow, I need to move it. So this is the new one. We'll see how it looks once it starts rolling out. The leaves look decent. They don't really have that much discoloration. There is a good root. This one seems to be growing and thriving. This boy is just enjoying life. It really doesn't care. And there's, if I can film it, it looks to be a new shoot, or like a new root. Maybe a new growth point. Either way, I'm going to put it into the light. There we are. This is the Phalaenopsis orchid. The newest growth has died off. The rest of the leaves look decent. So I'm just gonna wait for this one to figure out that it wants to grow. The aemulata looks surprisingly good. I'm not expecting any root growth on this at this point, and I should probably trim off a lot of leaves, but I just haven't bothered. I was amazed that it was growing at all. Hi, so it's been approximately 5 weeks since I picked up my plants at the Ecuagenera Pop-up, so I thought I'd go through them and show you how they've fared and talk a bit about them. So this here is my Philedendron Majesty, and it's been growing quite well in this little cup. I've just planted all of the plants in a mix of mineral and moss, and I've kept them. In the beginning they were in about 80 to 90% humidity, but my humidifier have not been able to keep up with the fan in my grow tent. So it's gone down to about 75% humidity, which is a bit too low for some of the more expensive aroids. Not for the Majesty though. This plant is really thriving, honestly. So it's growing a new leaf. It's not growing fast, but it's growing a new leaf. It's also getting some air roots growing in. They're not fussy, so the humidity isn't high enough for that, but they're growing. It's only lost one leaf, and it's also produced quite a lot of new roots. They're kind of adorable. They're red, as the rest of the plant is. It's doing great, honestly. So I'm looking forward to that new leaf, and I might even take it out to the grow tent in a couple of months. Now this is my Philedendron serpens, and the main thing that I have done wrong with this plant is underwatering, because I was absolutely terrified of this plant rotting, because it's related to the warocqueanum that rots very easily. So I put it in this very airy pot, and so it's been drying out instead. Yeah, this plant is just terrible at the moment. I did keep this one leaf, and it's been able to sustain it. The new growth shoot has died off. I doubt that it's grown any new roots. It looks miserable, honestly. Part of me kind of want to just cut it up and start propagating the nodes while they're still alive. I don't really know if I dare to do it. Looking at it now, that really does look like the safest option, since I've already dried it out this much. Like, I don't know if this stem will ever be able to bounce back. I'm gonna give it like a lot of water after this, which is probably just gonna make the problem even worse. And please comment down below what I should do. Please just give me some advice on this. Should I cut it? Because I'm willing to do so. Then this one is the Philedendron lynamii, and this plant hasn't, it might have lost one like baby leaf, but it hasn't really dropped its leaves. This, which was the newest leaf, is still floppy. It still has a bit of yellowing, but it hasn't really declined, but it's not growing either. So this is the new shoot, which, yeah, it is growing, but at such a slow speed that you can't really tell. When it comes to the roots, it's growing much slower than what the Majesty does. It's doing great though, for having grown this little. It's doing absolutely amazing. But I haven't really been able to give this one that much light either. Excited to see how this one fares. I have planned to remove this from the grow tent. I really want to start transferring it out. Once it gets better light, I think this is a plant that's going to do way better. Don't think it's that dependent on humidity. I think light is a bigger deal for this plant. Alright, now this plant that is dripping all over me is the Calathea emulata. It's doing fine. I've trimmed off the leaves that dried off completely and it's growing new ones. It's even growing roots. I am surprised by how well the Calathea is acclimatized. I wasn't sure this was going to happen. So it's common for even the Calathea you buy at a garden centre to start losing leaves just from changing environment. That's how this plant reacts to that. It's really no different if you buy them from a garden centre and if you buy them from Ecuador, it seems. And this here is the Calathea veitchiana, and it has not gotten any new growth as far as I can see. I haven't cut away these leaves just because it sort of seems like they're still doing its thing. They are still nice and firm, so I assume they are. And they have grown quite a lot of roots. That's actually impressive. As far as I can see, this is just a normal medallion, so they usually turn out like this if you bring them home from a nice garden centre into your dry ass home. They're gonna end up like this. Anyway, so it's really the same experience, I'd say. Cattleya bowringiana, and it's dry because it's supposed to. Apparently, I've learnt after is that this plant is supposed to be dry until you can see some growth. And there is a leaf growing down here, which I am at least 90% certain is not from this plant. So, I don't know what that is. Maybe it's something that came with the moss, it could be. So this one does like quite a lot of light, so I'm planning on moving this one outside, maybe into the greenhouse, and then I'm just going to start watering and see if it wakes up. And this here is the Stanhopea wardii, and it's the same case with this one. You're not really supposed to water until you start to see the roots grow. This one is in moist moss though, so it's probably not very happy about it. Oh, I can see growth. Okay, so I'm supposed to have it wet at this point, which is good because that's what I've been doing. But this one looks good. It looks great. The new shoot, the new growth on this one did die within maybe the first 2 weeks, but as I've just discovered, there are at least two new shoots growing here, so that's fantastic. This is a orchid that will grow flower stalks that grows downwards, so it really needs to be in a basket. As with most orchids, it does enjoy being a bit root bound. If you want it to actually flower, it needs to be root bound. So that's great. I've been able to successfully keep an orchid. That's a point for me. Starting out with the Anthurium forgetii. Now, as I said in the first video, I think, the green form is supposedly harder to keep than the hybrid, and I think that's true. Let's start with this one. This is Anthurium forgetii green form, and it's not doing good. I can see some roots in this one that is still green. It has reverted back to a stump. Now this one, on the other hand, it's in the same aerated pot as what I've kept the serpens in, and this one is also very dry. Now I've managed to keep this leaf alive. It doesn't look happy, but it's alive. And on this one you can actually see new growth. It seems like it's putting out a lot of roots. The reason for why it has so much growth in the top is because that's the only place where there is any wet substrate. Everything else is kind of dry. That's a common problem that I have. I tend to underwater my plants just because I'm afraid that they're going to drown. Where's my note? These here are my two long boys. The Anthurium pallidaflorum, and this is the Anthurium friedrichstalii, which I can't pronounce, and both of these are actually doing very good. So we can start out with this one. This is the one that I discovered quite recently had a new leaf growing, which is this one, and it's grown, I think it's one of the longest leaves that it has. This plant doesn't really care about being shipped. As I'm sitting here, I think I've just discovered a new growth. Yeah, there's a new leaf forming. I like this plant. It's a good plant. Really nice, thick, juicy roots in this one. It looks good. I've not seen any new roots form on the top, but it doesn't look like it's having any issues at all. This is a plant that I am planning on bringing into my house at one point. Thank you. I like that plant. I don't think it's actually rare. Well, in my area it is. Most Anthuriums are rare here. I think in the US this is quite a common plant. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now the pallidaflorum is also growing a new leaf at the moment. Also growing quite a lot of roots. Now I think most of these roots are same as the other one. They're growing at the top because that's where the most of the humidity is. Now I placed a lot of mineral mixture at the bottom just to keep the cup heavy enough so that it wouldn't fall over immediately, and because of this all of the humid substrate is at the top and they don't really want to grow downwards. You should usually put some soil or something at the bottom just to make the roots want to grow downwards to it. So we have quite a lot of roots growing down here. I hope some of these roots will turn back into the pot and not try to run away with the plant. It's looking good. I'm looking forward to see the size of this one. Right, so let's start out with the Anthurium moronense. This plant is not happy. I'm not really seeing any roots. What I'm going to do with this one is to turn it into a propagation. I think it's miserable. It doesn't like me. And now another stump. This is the Anthurium gymnopus. And it's actually, okay, this is kind of disgusting. It's started to mold on top of the substrate. There's a lot of dead roots down here, but there is also a tiny bit of new growth. I would like to turn it into propagation. I would like to put it in a prop box or something. Now this one is the Anthurium magnificum seedling. Can you see those roots from here? I think this is the best growth I've had of any of these plants. I'm going to cut off this seedling leaf just because it looks bad, and I might also trim this newest leaf. But the roots look amazing. I think I'm gonna have to start fertilize this plant, and it can't really stay in this pot for too long because it's gonna outgrow it, and that's always a joy. Thank you, plant, for growing this well. Okay, so this is the Anthurium luxurians, and the leaves on this one is not gonna budge, really. It can survive most things, even me. I think it's been overwatered because this plant is very thirsty, and I've been making sure to water it often enough, which has led to it getting a bit too much water right now. I can both see new growth, but I can also see something that looks a bit rotten. So something that I would like to do is to take this out of the pot, trim away what's rotten, and maybe give it a slightly bigger pot. It is going to form a new leaf. It's just going to take a very long before it does so. Then this is the Anthurium queremalense, and I do see some new root growth. It has been able to sustain this one leaf. This shoot at the top is still alive, but I don't really have any hope in this one for being able to form a leaf. But yeah, it's surviving. It's doing okay. I can see some of the dead roots in this one as well, but it looks like it's managing at the moment, so I would like to just have this one stay in the pot. And this one is the Anthurium warocqueanum. Now I did choose to trim away all of the leaves just so that I would have a greater chance of the roots surviving. I don't see any new root growth, but I do see some rotten roots. So I am also going to repot this one and turn it into a propagation just to see if I can salvage it. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. So what I've done now is I've cleaned off all the substrate and then I cleaned off all of the roots. Now what I've put all of the discarded roots in these little glasses, and you can see how much is left of the actual stumps. Basically nothing. There is no rootage at all, but they are still green, so they are still alive. And this here is what is left of the Anthurium luxurians. Now it has started growing some new roots, so I'm just going to pot it back up. But I did end up cutting off this massive chunk, which I don't really have any hope for at all. But I'm going to prop it up, same with the other ones, and just see. It looks like it's about to die. But who knows, it's the luxurians after all, so you gotta save every pot you get. When it comes to the gymnopus, this one also had quite a large stem with the plant. All of that was dead. And thank you for following along. Until next time.